Okay, we are back with Andy Olen, the sales warrior within. This has been going, I mean, just valuable gems, and I wanted to do some follow-ups with you here. I had a question that comes where I talk about this, and I want to kind of get your input on what percentage. So there's two factors that I believe film investors or potential investors invest in a film project for. And I'd love to get your percentage. What percentage do you think people would invest in me, Scott DuPont, or you, Andy Olen? And what percentage is it actually the project? So it's the individual and the actual project or product.
Sure, sure. Well, in sales, we often say the customer is buying the person, not the product. So I'm gonna go with that belief and say 65-35, 65% in the person, 35% in the product.
Yeah, no, I've always heard it's the person first,
Hmm.
always, and that's why, um, all these things you're talking about, like build the rapport, have trust, be predictable, always kind of follow up. Which leads me to my next question. So in the film process, we talked a little bit about when you get to the negotiating. Obviously, you're not going to negotiate anything on the first meeting because you're just sharing the big concept. At that point, you would share a detailed business plan, let them digest all the numbers. Maybe a week later, maybe a couple weeks later, you do the follow up. I always like to say the fortune is in the follow up,
I like that.
especially with film investment because it's very risky. Like I've never had a person call me up after looking at a business plan. Oh, Scott, yeah, I reviewed your business plan over the last week, and yeah, I'd love to write you a $200,000 check, which I probably will not make my money back. Right? It's not like they need the film investment. Can you talk a little bit about how important follow up is on this type of sales?
Well, you hit it right there on the head, especially with investments and a process like you described where these are big dollars, right? This is not immaterial. This is not buying a pack of gum at the grocery store. I mean, there you can go in, you make that decision maybe just
Or
while
a
you're in the
five
checkout line.
dollar Kickstarter Indiegogo donation.
Right, exactly. I mean, we're at the point here where the economics and the stakes and the reputations are big, and I would imagine too that it's for some of the big film and tickets, the price that goes along with the big films, that it's someone's job on the other end that if they screw this up. They could get fired. So this is pretty consequential stuff. Therefore, it does take time. And I love the idea of the thoughtfulness in the follow up as well. So I think it's okay just to expect that, hey, if I go in, all I want to do in the first meeting is to make a great first impression and to get them excited about the idea, excited about me as well. And so it sort of whets their appetite to learn more. If I have that leave behind to give them a little bit more detail, then I have a reason to follow up. And people just have to be patient with this. For folks that for a lot of customers, they're busy people. They have their personal lives, they have their professional lives, and maybe your next meeting or that email from you, it's not their priority in that moment. No problem. It's okay to fire back another email and just say, hey, just wanted to confirm that you received my previous note and we had a great meeting and I'm ready for the next step and I have all the answers to your follow-up questions. I do think, though, a great goal out of the first meeting you have is that if you get the sense through their body language communication to you that they are interested and excited about your idea and you, ask for the calendaring of the follow-up meeting at that point. A lot of salespeople I see make the mistake of saying, that was a great meeting. And I asked, did you get a follow-up calendared, a meeting scheduled? No, I was going to send an email to do that. Well, then all of a sudden you're brought back down to a lower part in the email box, in the queue. The other priorities start to take over. But when you have their attention at each and every step of the way, get that next meeting scheduled. And when people, if they have to reschedule with you, they might feel guilty in canceling or rescheduling. They're likely to do it. And that's a lot better to get it done right away and to take that step. And what a great way to sort of close your first meeting is like to ask for a follow up. And does, 2 weeks from now on Tuesday at 3 o'clock work for you? They get their calendars out, you book it, you walk away. You didn't get your film fully financed and approved yet, but you're making progress. They're willing to give you more of their time. So stay disciplined with asking for that next meeting all the way through. And if you do that, you're going to feel like you're really making great progress.
So powerful. I call that being pleasantly persistent,
Yes.
just keeping on top of it. And I'm glad you brought up, and I do this every single initial phone call or every single initial meeting. I'm so glad you brought up that, hey, and this is the way I normally word it, is I say, okay, is it okay if I share the business plan? Great. And then I will say, before I get off the phone or leave the meeting, is it okay if I follow up the end of next week? What's a good day for you? They respond. Okay, so let's say, okay, you can call me next Friday. So that also allows me, and there's two unique words that I use in film financing that are like magic to instantly build that trust and rapport that you're talking about. So if I get a date, okay, next Friday, sure, Scott, you can follow up next Friday. I'll have time within that week to look over the business plan. When I call them up or if I do a follow up email, I will use the two magic words that are as promised. I'm following up Friday. Or as promised, like we discussed, I'm following up today. And that really is powerful. And I'm glad you mentioned you gotta get that set up, that next step scheduled on the first meeting. So
Agree.
powerful.
I like the words as promised, comma, and then you're doing exactly what you said. It shows your thoroughness, your follow through, and that trust of you are doing what you said you were going to do. And then you just keep doing that. And, there's another scenario out there where someone cancels with you or they don't reply anymore and you're being ghosted. And that's just something that's in our environment right now. And I don't want your listeners to get really dissuaded or frustrated from people that ghost you. Some percentage of people that you pitch to will sort of fall off the face of the earth. That's not you. That's not a function of you. You did have a good meeting. Your instincts are right about the first one, but life got in the way. Other things got in the way. Maybe someone switched jobs. They had a life event. And, or other people, they just aren't confident enough to say, we're going to pass on your idea. And they'd rather handle that very passively. Some would say passive aggressively. I just say it's passive and they're just not going to reply. They're going to stay away. So what do you do in that situation? I say you follow up multiple times and maybe you have to switch your modality or your mode of follow up. It's not just an email. Maybe it's a phone call. Be brave, get on the phone, try. And if they really are not getting back to you, just move on. You don't want to put too many more of your calories into this situation. It's okay. It's not about you. It's most likely about the person on the other side.
I'm glad you brought that up about ghosting or people, not responding. What's your rule? Like 3 times, 5 times following up? Because you don't want to be like crazy, right?
Yeah, it sort of depends on how big the opportunity is. So if it's not so big, maybe 3 times. What I try to do as well is then also get LinkedIn with that individual or be on Instagram with that person. So remember that if you're putting out content on LinkedIn, on Instagram, on Facebook, whatever social media platforms your team's comfortable and your listeners are comfortable with, and if that person's there, they may not be reading your text or replying to you, but they're seeing you. And I've had people that have ghosted me come back around and say, hey, you know what? I saw one of your videos on LinkedIn, Andy, and I really meant to call you back. And now I did. It just meant to me that the timing was right when they got back to me. And earlier it just wasn't. So if it's a small deal, yeah, maybe 3 times formally, then my next position is to get them on my social media, just be out there as a reminder. And you know what? Karma is sort of a boomerang. So I'm going to be nice to people. I'm going to be thoughtful about it. It doesn't bother me too much because I want to put the positive energy out there and not get all frustrated about it. Because most likely, if there's a need for what I do or my movie, my idea, they will come back to me. And I do think good salespeople and good people that are pitching, that are doing this process of following up, getting the next calendared event, they're not going to be ghosted very often. I just wanted to bring that forward because it does happen more and more in today's society.
Yeah, no, that was great. I'm glad you brought that up because if you're a filmmaker right now in the actual process of film fundraising and you're not posting on a couple of different social media platforms at least once a week, you're missing the boat because keeping in front of people without DMing, IMing, without calling them, they could possibly, like Andy just mentioned, they could possibly see that. And I say a minimum of 3 times, usually 5. And then, maybe on your fifth email, he says, hey, um, I've tried to reach out to you, whatever. If you change your mind, we're just about to close out the financing for the film. Let me know ASAP. Otherwise, best of luck.
Yeah, absolutely. Two reactions to that. One is that when customers see that you, or when funders see that you may have multiple alternatives to move towards for funding, they may not want to miss out. Then you get into FOMO, right? The fear of missing out. And if they
Yes.
see that or they're aware of that somehow, it's like, oh no, Scott, come back in over here. And that's a very powerful tool of persuasion. That if there are many alternatives that you have out there, one, you actually gain strength in the negotiation, and two, it might bring in that other person that had looked at you and then ghosted you. So that's one area where that's really helpful, and you can do that very nicely, very authentically through posting. The other thing you might want to do is if you have this individual's mobile number, is instead of sending a text message or an email, just I'll hold up my phone here. So I'll describe it. I'll turn my phone around, take a quick video. Hey, Scott, haven't talked to you in a while. I'm making really good progress with my film. Would love to have another conversation with you. Boom, send. And maybe they look at that video and it reconnects. It reminds or it reminds that person of how much they enjoyed that face to face with you once they see your face again. So don't be afraid to use all the tools we have to connect with people. And maybe it's just that quick turning the phone around and filming yourself. Is there worst case scenario in that situation is they keep ghosting you. Doesn't matter. Best case scenario is they say, you know what? I'm thinking about this again. I'd love to have you come back in.
Yeah, I thank you for sharing because you got to get creative sometimes. I have used the audio feature on my phone
Mhm.
to email an audio message because it's less intrusive of pinging their phone all the time. They read their email when they want to read their email these days. Most people are like glued to their phone, but a video is a great idea.
Sure.
And if you don't follow up on an independent film, I was years ago, I went into a good friend's office at Universal Studios Florida, and we were having this conversation, and he goes, "Yeah, thank God we got this last film funded." And I found out like 6 months later, running into people, that there were 3 people I missed who said they wanted to invest that I just missed. Right? Luckily, his film got funded, but he never followed up with those 3 people who said they wanted to invest. So fortune's in the follow up.
Fortune is in the follow up. I'm going to use that one. That's a great line. And it's a great piece of advice for your listeners.
So I could literally keep you here for another half hour. I've learned so much. I know our audience is going to love this up. If someone wants to really drill down with you and get some high level stuff, tell me a little bit about your coaching and how that process works with you.
Absolutely. I coach. It's a lot of fun to work with high performers or people in any industry to help them feel more confident as a salesperson, as a business person, or in the case of your listeners, in really successfully pitching and building a funding deal for their film. And yeah, my coaching engagements, I've worked with Navy SEALs, I work with professional athletes, I work with business executives, salespeople. And, really what I like to do with folks is find out what they're really good at. Everyone has a core set of skills. They have core strengths. I usually do an assessment using the Clifton Strengths Finder to say, hey, Scott, you're really good at this, this, and this. How do we apply your skills to whatever mission you're on, whatever activity, whatever sale you want to get through, or business transaction or funding you want to create? And so it's a very personalized experience, and it can be as short as just a couple weeks if there's something that needs to take place, and as long as 6 months or longer if it's a real drawn out or real big developmental opportunity. So yeah, it's all comers and it's a real personal experience. And I usually end up becoming, either close professional colleagues or friends with these folks, or even we stay in touch. And whenever we're traveling, we try to see each other too. So it's rewarding on all sides. And I love to see great people do amazing things with just a little bit of structure and a little bit of support as well.
Awesome. And sometimes it takes an outsider, an expert like you to look at them, like we were talking about the handshake earlier,
Yeah.
to, hey, you're off a little bit. Let me adjust this, or let me give you some ideas. Let me give you some strategies. And that I've seen people just take off in their business or their sales abilities, their fundraising with some help. What's the best way that people can contact you or follow you or learn more about the Sales Warrior Within podcast?
Yeah, my whole offering on from online courses to the podcast as well, the Sales Warrior Within, andyolen.com. So ANDYOLEN.com. Or if you want to just go right to the podcast, the Sales Warrior Within, I have great guests on the podcast. And also you'll just hear me doing it about 15 to 20 minutes long. So quick pieces of advice on things that all salespeople or folks that want to be expressing their sales skills and their sales warrior within can learn from, and that's available on Apple, Spotify, anywhere where you listen to your podcasts.
Awesome. I'm definitely going to subscribe to your podcast, start loading up on those, as well
Thank you.
as your TED Talk that I'll look up on YouTube. I'll put that in the show notes as well. Any final words of advice for indie filmmakers out there in the trenches trying to raise 250,000 or $1 million?
Yeah. So hopefully from our time together on the podcast, there's a little bit more confidence that, hey, being the salesperson is good. There's nobility in it. And boy, I got a great story to tell. I have a great film I'm going to create, and I want the world to see it. And the only thing that stands in the way of the world seeing your wonderful story and creation is just your ability to put it in front of people that can help elevate it through an investment, through funding, and bringing it forward. So, just with a couple of simple best practices like we've talked about here, you can take a lot of huge steps and really make a big impact with that. So I would just say have the bravery and sort of feel that empowerment to step out there and recognize that salesperson within you. And it's a wonderful complementary skill to the wonderful creative and the genius that you're creating with your film as well.
Awesome. Andy Olen, the Sales Warrior Within. Thank you so much. I don't know if you noticed, I took a whole page of notes here myself. I know the audience probably got a lot out of it. So thank you so much.
Scott, it was great being with you and your audience, and good luck to everyone.
Take care.
Thanks for listening. And remember, it's time!
There's never been a better time to make your own indie film. And if you have a dream project you're excited about and 100% committed to getting it funded, go to financeyourmovie.com and click on the green telephone button. You'll see our calendar, and if you find an open spot, grab it. You'll get a one-on-one call with me or one of my partners. It will be the best hour you've ever spent getting clarity and strategy towards financing your movie. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next week.